Chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Matheson.
Well, thank you, Chairman Markey, for holding this hearing. As the committee knows, I've been working on this bipartisan legislation with my friends Bart Gordon of Tennessee and Lee Terry of Nebraska for the past 2 years. The subcommittee held a similar legislative hearing last year, and it was clear to those of us who attended that hearing that the policy for low-level radioactive waste in this country, as created by the federal government in the legislation of 1980 and 1985, has some gaps. And there's some questions, and Congress ought to relook at this policy, and that's why we're here today. I would say that it's hard to see why the U.S. would ever want to import radioactive waste from other countries. Simply put, we have very few locations in this country where this waste can go. Given the fact, and I agree with Mr. Upton, we are facing a future with an additional amount of nuclear power in this country, and I support the creation of new nuclear power plants. It seems to me, as we focus on carbon-free energy sources, and nuclear power seems to grow in the U.S. over the next few years, that we want to preserve the U.S. capacity for low-level radioactive waste. Some have said this is an anti-nuclear bill, and nothing could be further from the truth. This is a pro-domestic nuclear power bill. I challenge anyone to show me in this legislation what's going to inhibit the development of domestic nuclear power. So I want to get that on the record right away in this opening statement, because that's just in the case. Now, as we said, the compact system which oversees the low-level radioactive waste, Utah is part of what's called the Northwest Compact. The compact says that while the Clive facility is authorized to take waste from outside the compact states, the compact also stated it had never considered or reviewed the issue of adopting an arrangement that would provide low-level radioactive waste generated in foreign countries access to the region for disposal at the Energy Solutions facility in Clive, Utah. As illustrated in the testimony of Mr. Slosky from the Rocky Mountain Compact, when Energy Solutions applied to the NRC for an import license for waste from Canada, because we've had some waste come into this country, some small amounts in the past, it was listed as only need to be processed at the Bear Creek facility. In fact, the waste was processed, then it was redesignated as U.S. waste and was ultimately stored in Utah without the knowledge of the Northwest Compact or without the knowledge of the state of Utah. So we can talk about some foreign waste that's come in and stayed here. The compact and the state didn't even know it happened. And those were all pretty small amounts, and now we're talking about a lot greater volume of radioactive waste. You'll hear some discussion during the hearing today about do we have enough capacity in this country. You'll hear reference to a GAO study from 2004. We talked about this in the hearing last year. They took one data point and projected it out from there. It happened to be a low year. You know, when I was a first-year MBA student, a professor tricked all of us with a case where he had us take some data and we projected out. Then he pointed out the other data and we all learned a good lesson. The GAO made that same first-year MBA mistake. I hope we don't when we look at this amount of capacity we've got. And again, I don't see a lot of other states lining up to create new sites to take this waste. In last year's hearing, Energy Solutions just randomly came to the agreement to self-limit foreign waste to a storage capacity of 5%. But at the same time, in the testimony from the companies today, they're suggesting they want to increase the license capacity of its site when just 2 years ago they voluntarily said to our governor, we won't apply for an application to increase our site. So these voluntary commitments may not have a lot of meaning. Mr. Chairman, I know my time has expired. I have a written statement I'd like to submit for the record, and I do thank you for the hearing. Look forward to the questions.
Great. We thank the gentleman very much. His time has expired. And perhaps you could give us the name of that professor that we could send over to the Congressional Budget Office so that they can have his insight as to how long-term projections are made.